All right, family. So President Donald Trump officially took office yesterday. Things are getting wild out here. He already signed a bunch of executive orders that are pretty crazy. Let's get into it here.
Trump is signing more executive orders. Yeah, I know, but yeah, this is all of the new stuff. Oh my, holy shit! Jesus!
We're
Look
looking
at
at
that.
different things.
President Trump, if the cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations, would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico
Of course.
to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
Mr. President,
And stranger
That is
things have
why they're very
happened.
strong.
sir, can we expect ICE raids starting tomorrow in major cities?
I don't want to say when, but it's going to happen.
This is actually an executive order designating the
Yeah,
cartels and other organizations to be foreign terrorist organizations.
Jesus.
That's a big one.
This is an
Sir,
executive.
just in Mexico doesn't want that. How are you going to deal with this?
I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
Sir, this is an executive order entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, which again deals with the southern border and the unprecedented admission of illegal aliens across the southern border.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. What? Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh,
Oh.
What's in there?
thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found this. Wow. Thank you. Maybe we should all read it together.
Let's read it.
Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that
Sounds
determination.
great. Happy to help with the
47.
President Trump, you and your members of your team now used to warn about the dangers of TikTok spying on Americans.
Yeah.
What changed that you're not worried about that?
They started voting for
Well, it
you.
depends on the deal. I mean, I may not do the deal or I may do the deal. TikTok is worthless if I don't approve it. If I do the deal, it's worth maybe $1 trillion, $1 trillion. So if I do the deal I'm talking about doing it for the United States. If I do the deal for the United States, I think we should get half. So I think like a joint venture, I think we would have a joint venture with the people from TikTok. Does Biden ever do news conferences like this? How many news conferences, Peter, has he done like this?
Like
Maybe
this?
None.
Zero.
And it would be zero for the next infinity. For infinity, it would be zero.
And you talked a bit about
Is it anything that he's growing? Is it anything that people need to be worried
No, I think
about?
it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of...
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie?
Wait, he's just gonna find out what the
Why don't we
drones
find
are
out?
right
I
now?
don't know why they
What the
wouldn't
fuck were these
said what it
drones?
was.
Man, so, I mean, something that you just can't deny about Donald Trump is that the guy
I think this is a pretty big one. I think he's
is
gonna
a
have this one
character,
measured.
right? The guy is a character. And I mean, you kind of gotta give the guy a bit of credit that he gets into office and he immediately knows a bunch of stuff that he wants to do. You might disagree with what he's doing, but he for sure is immediately shaking things up, immediately making changes. Here's a fuller list of some of the executive orders that Donald Trump signed immediately upon coming into office. So he reinstated the name of Mount McKinley. He renamed the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America. I found that one pretty tasteless. I don't really see the point of that. Designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, that's pretty intense. That's going to be controversial. I think that might be a good thing, honestly. I think the cartels are out of control in Mexico and other countries south of the border, and I think they engage in a lot of straight up cold-blooded violent crime that is afflicting a lot of innocent people. So I think striking some fear into their hearts and being like, hey, somebody's going to hold you accountable, maybe that's a good thing. Of course, there's infinite ways to interpret every issue. Nothing's black and white. Ending the DEI hiring in the federal government, that's pretty wild. That's going to be controversial. Again, many ways to interpret that. Personally, that seems okay to me. I don't really think that people should be given preferential treatment, being hired based on surface level characteristics. I think it should be more based on the content of one's character and the merit of one's credentials. Let's see here. Revocation of security clearances held by former intelligence officials involved with inappropriate political coordination with the 2020 Biden presidential campaign. Interesting. So revoking some security clearance of some intelligence officials who were connected to Biden. Not too surprising there. Granting pardons for the January 6 rioters. That one's going to be wildly controversial. Of course, the January 6 rioters were the people who kind of stormed the White House after Trump lost the 2020 election. And that was one of the most controversial things in American history, the way Trump reacted to that. A lot of people have made a huge deal out of that. I think it's not too surprising that he pardoned them. But yeah, I'm not to say whether that's ultimately good or bad. I don't know. Declaring a national energy emergency, that's pretty wild. I mean, I'm guessing that's connected to the drill baby drill situation that he wants to move forward with, which again, drill baby drill is going to be controversial as well. I don't have too strong of an opinion about a lot of these things because I feel like they're too complex of issues for anyone to really know how they're ultimately going to ripple outward with all their infinite implications into the sphere of this world. So, I mean, I can say that one thing about Trump is that he inspires hope in a lot of people, and he inspires hope for times of prosperity ahead. And I think drill baby drill is connected to that when he tells the American people, look, we're sitting on oceans of liquid gold here, and we're going to actually cash in on this and make this country great again and wealthy again. You know, a lot of people love to hear that. It feels inspiring to a lot of people. And economies, stock markets for sure, in a profound sense, are just based on people's perception, people's belief. So if people believe in the country, if people believe in the stock market, then the market's likely to do well. So someone like Trump, he inspires a huge belief in the markets, a belief in the narrative of progress, the narrative of American greatness. We've already seen the stock markets and crypto markets go up significantly since since he won the election. And so we're probably going to see more of that. And, you know, self-interestedly as an investor in cryptocurrency who doesn't have a particularly large amount, but, you know, I like to see number go up on screen like any other monkey. But yeah, there are, I mean, much deeper questions at play here at this point in civilization. Like, we do have to start asking, are we going to run up against planetary boundaries in terms of our extraction of resources and our conversion of this planet into, you know, just a trash heap of human waste and human construction in a non-sustainable fashion? I think that is something that needs to be asked. I mean, I'm not as big on the whole CO2 carbon emissions narrative. I don't know enough about that. I think that can be kind of a distraction, but you cannot deny that like half the forests on this planet have been cut down. The oceans are severely polluted. The air is severely polluted in many places. And so I do believe we need to radically shift our relationship to the earth if we want to pass on a beautiful world to our grandchildren's grandchildren. So there are these bigger issues here, but it's not surprising that many Americans are just really just focused on the short term. They're just like, look, they're feeling the stress, they're feeling the pressure, they're feeling the, you know, what's it called, the cost of living crisis. I mean, the inflation's really affecting people. And so it's not too surprising that they're just really happy to hear, like, we're going to cut inflation, we're going to drill, baby, drill, we're going to make boatloads of wealth, and we're going to improve the conditions in this nation. And yeah, a lot of people don't really care how that affects the earth and future generations, or if they do care about that, it's just a much lower priority than the immediate survival and comfort needs and desires, which is understandable. It's just kind of human nature. Let's see, promoting beautiful federal civic architecture. That sounds great. I'd love to see a return to classical European architecture. I mean, we've really lost the plot in Western civilization. Our architecture used to be godly, divine in nature. We used to have these sprawling cathedrals reaching toward the heavens, not to mention just gorgeous European architecture all around. I mean, I live in Europe and I see it, and I see how Europe is losing the plot on their old architectural brilliance, and I see how America never really found the plot. American architecture pales in comparison to European architecture. I mean, it's shit by comparison, except for in rare places like San Francisco or something. You got a lot of beautiful architecture, but America was far too much built with the prioritization of the dollar sign and efficiency, and therefore a lot of buildings look ugly as shit. And I think we underestimate the value of living in beauty and making this world artistically beautiful. Restoring the death penalty in the US. Damn, I mean, that's pretty intense. I generally would love to see humanity move to a point where we don't have to kill anyone anymore. And at the same time, that seems, that seems kind of far away right now. But yeah, I'm generally not in favor of that, not in favor of restoring the death penalty. And to be clear, if I didn't say this already, I did not vote for Trump in the election. I chose not to vote. I researched both parties and I found that neither party sufficiently represented my values. I felt like predicting which stick of dynamite would be more destructive or generative when dropped into the mine shaft of an America in decline in 2025 and beyond was just like basically an impossible equation to tabulate. I did lean slightly toward preferring for Trump to win based on all the data that I factored, but it wasn't enough for me to actually vote for him because I have questions about his personal integrity. The guy's an enigma. It's hard to really know what the content of his character consists of, but I also don't think he can be reduced to the caricatures that are put forth of him. I don't think you get shot in the literal head and you keep going out of pure selfishness. I don't believe that Trump is just a purely selfish, egomaniacal narcissist who's only out for himself. I just don't think you get shot in the head and you keep going if that's all you're about. I mean, this man's on a mission. You can see that in his energy. He is on a mission. Whether you agree with his mission or not is one thing, but he is on a mission. And again, as I've said before, that activates something in the collective male psyche and just in the collective psyche, because there are many people, they may be triggered by Trump, but on some deep level, they actually wish that they could be as single-pointedly focused and determined and on a mission like Donald Trump. They wish that they could channel their energies in such a way so as to be a wrecking ball that could actually strike this planet like a meteorite and make some impact here. Oftentimes, very often, when we're triggered by someone or activated by someone, it's because they're embodying some kind of latent capacity within themselves that we wish we could more fully bring forth. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. Routing water through California seems generally good. Securing United States borders, that's a massive, massive issue. I see the next one here is U.S. citizenship does not automatically extend to those born in the U.S. That's massive. I mean, this was the issue that swung the election, in my opinion. After talking to a lot of Americans, people were very concerned about Biden's complete relinquishment of the usual security of the southern border. I mean, they were just really letting gargantuan quantities of unpoliced, unchecked people just pour into the country without any kind of accountability of like, oh, you just illegally crossed our border, you broke a law, so there should be consequences for that. There were no consequences for tons of these people, and naturally, tons of these people who I have compassion for, I'm sure many are in desperate situations, but naturally many of them are criminals who've committed crimes in their own countries, who are in difficult situations. There were plenty of gang members, Venezuelan gang members, taking over apartment complexes in Colorado and elsewhere. You had a destabilizing crisis starting to unfold with the sheer volume of illegal immigrants, many of whom, are not the types of immigrants that the U.S. Citizenry really wants to be letting into the country, plain and simple. And so that was a massive issue for people. And so I'm sure many people are super pleased to see Trump doing this. And at the same time, there's, the arguments on the other side primarily revolve around compassion for all people, compassion for, love thy neighbor as thyself. And I think it's a really tricky issue. I said it in a video yesterday. I do think the world is not really ready for open borders. I think cultures and societies are in two vastly different of places. As in, if you allow a massive influx of people from a completely different culture, and in some cases a culture that might be, hundreds of years in the past in terms of having a more medieval mindset about different things, if you allow tons of people from a wildly different culture into your country who aren't necessarily interested in integrating, it's gonna have massive destabilizing effects. And we're starting to see that throughout the West. We're seeing it in Europe. We started to see it in the United States. And it's understandable that people are wary of that and upset about that. And it's going to be a massive issue of our times, because likely there will be plenty more displacement from, natural catastrophes and wars, refugee situations in our time. And so I do think we are called to open up our hearts, open up compassion, and really try to put ourselves in the shoes of everyone on this earth and have compassion and love for everyone as best we can. And at the same time, I think countries have a right to say, no, enough is enough. This is destabilizing our country. This is not going to lead to good places that serve the whole. And, to set boundaries in place and to set safeguards and regulations that say you need to, demonstrate certain things about why you're immigrating and who you are before we just let you into this country. I think that's reasonable, because I also don't think we want to incentivize everyone in the world to just leave their country when shit starts hitting the fan. I think we want to incentivize people to stay in their homeland in many cases and fix their homeland and take care of their homeland. And, that's kind of ironic for me to say as an American living in Germany, but that's the way the cookie crumbled for me. I met my wife, who is German. She interviewed me on a podcast a few years ago. That's how we met. We didn't want to stop talking, and the rest is history. Bada bing, bada boom. We have a beautiful daughter together, and it just makes sense for us to live in Germany right now for a variety of reasons. But generally, I still think, when shit hits the fan, having a ton of people just exit their country rather than staying there to fix it and rebuild doesn't seem like the best way to go in a lot of cases to me. So those are a few of my thoughts on that particular issue. Let's see. Realignment of refugee admissions program. Not sure on the details on that. Unleashing affordable, reliable energy and natural resources. That might be drill, baby, drill. Clarifying the military's role in protecting U.S. borders. I think Trump is empowering the military to do more at the border, which, yeah, again, I'm sure a lot of his fans are going to like that, and others will find it controversial. America First trade policy, benefiting American workers, manufacturers, farmers, ranchers, entrepreneurs, and businesses. Yeah, a lot of Americans are going to love that, of course, and others will find it controversial. Withdrawing the U.S. from the WHO, the World Health Organization. That's pretty wild. Yeah, I don't know enough to say too much, but I did find, yeah, I mean, if I recall, I found some of the WHO's actions and approaches during the pandemic a few years ago to be pretty objectionable and questionable. So maybe this is a good thing. Again, no one can foresee the infinite implications of any of these decisions. So no one knows if any of this stuff is ultimately good or bad for this cosmos. I mean, we are reality, we are the cosmos. Reality can never step outside of itself to objectively assess its own success or failure. But of course, as human beings, we can assess things in terms of our values and the stories we tell and what we see when we look at the world. So that's about the best we can do. And I do think it's important for us to do that. Delaying the TikTok ban for 75 days. I thought this was pretty badass. I had just started to use TikTok again when it got banned. And it's not banned in Germany, but I was still hit by the ban because my account was registered American. And so, yeah, it was cool to me that Trump just immediately delayed or rescinded that ban. I'll be curious if he completely reverses it or not. Yeah, I don't like the idea of completely blocking platforms. I mean, it is tricky. Maybe that platform is being used to spy on Americans or something. But yeah, like Trump said, he wants to potentially make a deal that could benefit America with the TikTok people. And yeah, generally, I don't know. I don't like the idea of censoring platforms or censoring free speech. I'm very much pro free speech type of fella. I believe in free expression. I don't think limiting people's free expression is I think that's hardly ever a wise move. So anywho, emergency price relief to the American people. That sounds pretty good. Hiring freeze for federal civilian employees. Yeah, that's wild. Doesn't apply to military personnel. So the government can't hire more people until he says so. I think that's good, honestly. I think the US government is a bloated behemoth that spends tons of its money in really stupid ways. I don't like giving money to the US government personally because I don't trust the way that they're going to spend it. Yeah, and I mean, Trump's talking about making our military even bigger. I don't like that either. I don't want my tax dollars to go to that. Although, you know, it seems like his approach is if we have the biggest, baddest, strongest military, nobody's going to mess with us, and then we can hopefully broker more world peace. I mean, my favorite thing he said in his inauguration speech yesterday was, stop all wars. America can stop all wars. I mean, that is an amazing statement. I would, absolutely love to see that. So yeah, I might not, I'm not sure if building America's military to a greater level is the way to do that. Kind of reminds me of that, who was it? I think Chekhov, the Russian author, said something like, if you write a gun into a story, at some point in the story, that gun has to go off. And so, if you just keep building bigger bombs and nukes and tanks and drones and stuff, it's like that stuff's gonna get used at some point, most likely. Whereas if you just don't build that stuff, it can't be used. So I'm sure people see that as an overly simplistic view, but I would rather hold that transcendent ideal of a world where we just disarm all nukes and all weapons of mass destruction. Although I do see the complexity of why that is probably not practical at this time for various actors. Let's see, restoring freedom of speech, ending federal censorship. Sounds great. I mean, you got to admit, like, it's pretty badass that he just immediately took office. He did a press conference and he just signed all these things, and he has a clear vision, and he's just immediately taking massive action. And some of these things seem pretty good. Restoring freedom of speech, ending federal censorship. Let's do it. Rescissions of dozens of executive orders from the Biden administration. Yeah, I think there were like 70 something that he just immediately put the kibosh to. So that was pretty wild. Only 2 sexes recognized by the federal government. Yeah, that's really wild. I don't know the full implications of that. It's going to be super controversial. I think it's a really tricky one. I think gender can be interpreted in infinite ways. This is saying sexes. I think biological sex is more clear, even though there are intersex people. But I thought yesterday in his speech he said gender, and there are infinite ways to interpret gender, I would say, although, in most cases it seems to be pretty clear cut, at least at this point in global culture, whether a person, seems to be male or female. But it's a tricky issue. I honestly think it's kind of a red herring, kind of a distraction from more important things when people get super fixated on that issue. I just feel like live and let live. Who cares what somebody wants to identify as? I don't give a shit. Department of Government efficiency to implement the president's Doge agenda. This is crazy shit. I mean, it looks like Elon Musk is going to be given access to downsize the US government, which generally, again, I'm in favor of. I think there's probably ungodly amounts of idiotic spending going on and idiotic positions and departments that don't need to exist at all. America is like $40 trillion in debt or something at this point, like an ungodly sum. Like, what example are we setting for our children to be carrying that godforsaken amount of debt? I mean, that's just preposterous. So I'm in favor of dramatically reducing America's debt, and I think cutting unnecessary shit out of the government is a great way to go. So do that shit, Elon, do it well. Protecting citizens from terrorist attacks, natural resources in Alaska, ensuring the government carries out the immigration laws, pulling US out of the Paris Agreement, again, going to be controversial. And again, hard to really foretell all the implications. Critics will say, oh, Trump doesn't care about the environment. But I think it's more complex than that. Trump has I think he does have more sophisticated arguments and positions than people give him credit for. And I think he probably sees it as this agreement is focused on the wrong things. It's focused on things that are more like tribal shibboleths and symbolic victories rather than shit that actually matters, and it's costing us vast sums of money. I think he said yesterday something like it would save the US $1 trillion to pull out of the Paris Agreement. So yeah, again, people caricature the guy, but I think he has reasons for what he's doing, whether you agree with those or not. So that's going to be a controversial one. Declaring a national emergency at the southern border. That's wild. That seems pretty appropriate given what happened during the Biden administration. Again, I think this was the biggest issue that swung the election. My understanding is that it became basically a free-for-all, and there was just no accountability down there. So yeah, I mean, that doesn't seem tenable. That doesn't seem sustainable. Pulling the U.S. out of global corporate tax deal secured by Biden. Interesting. Don't know much about that. Okay, so anywho, that is the breakdown of some of the wildest things that Trump did on his first day in office. Thank you for listening. Thank you for rocking with me here today. I hope this was interesting. I mean, he also said in his speech that he was going to, I believe, rehire all of the unvaccinated military people who objected to the mandatory vaccines during the pandemic. I believe he said he was going to do that and give them all the back pay that they missed out on since they were fired for that, which I found that pretty wild and pretty cool, really, from my view, because I was personally, I'm not in favor of mandating that people inject themselves with improperly tested research chemicals. You know, that mRNA vaccine was not properly tested. There's been tons of evidence that's come to light to suggest a very unclear picture as to whether it was really a good idea for people to inject themselves with that. And so I think forcing people to do that was bullshit. And so I consider that a W for bodily sovereignty, for freedom. You know, I'm not in favor of forcing people to inject things into their body. That seems akin to, seems similar to sexual assault in a way to me, forcing someone to penetrate their body with a foreign object containing foreign research chemicals. I mean, that's just very strange. So anywho, thank you for listening. I hope this was valuable in some way for somebody. If you appreciated it, hit subscribe, hang out with me. I got a lot more coming. I'm in a really experimental phase right now with my content. I'm just kind of falling in love with YouTube and making videos, and so I'm trying to figure out which direction I want to take this thing. But you'll very likely be seeing more videos like this, more reaction videos. I might end up creating multiple channels over time so I can categorize this content in a way that makes a bit more sense and is more friendly to the algorithm, so I can reach the people that I'm trying to reach with this stuff. But subscribe, rock with me. Generally, I create stuff that is intended to be uplifting, entertaining, to contain hopefully wisdom and fresh perspectives, insight, and principles for the good life, principles for well-being, principles for connecting to the radiant beauty of this cosmos that is all around us at all times. So stay with me, rock with me. Thank you for being here. Family, thank you, God, for this day. Thank you, life, cosmos, earth. Thank you to the source of life, which I call God, the mysterious source of life. Thank you, Christ. Thank you to the heart of love. Love to all beings. I love you. Thank you for watching. Much peace, much joy. Take it easy. Nothing to do but be you, baby. Nothing to do but be you.